Hello, friends and colleagues, and welcome to the Tourism Skillshop, hosted by State of Washington Tourism, SWT. My name is Matthew Ozuna, and I am the Destination Development Manager at SWT. I will introduce today's webinar on creating value-added experiences for heritage travelers. Please utilize the chat function in Zoom to say hello and let us know where you're zooming in from today. Feel free to share your questions and comments in the chat box at any time during the webinar. You can also use the Q&A feature as well near the end of the webinar. And if there is an important question, Tamara will kindly interject and ask it in the moment. Tamara Rice, I'll introduce my colleague, will be joining us today. She is the Destination Development Coordinator at SWT. You'll probably interact with Tamara quite a bit if you are applying to any of the 9 destination planning and development grants from State of Washington Tourism. Like I said, Tamara will monitor the chat and help address questions from the audience near the end of the webinar. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about the Tourism Skillshop. The Tourism Skillshop is one of many industry educational programs from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage with colleagues across the tourism sector to broaden their industry knowledge, skills, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and to discuss with industry experts like Marcy and Judy. The State of Washington Tourism will host live webinars of the Tourism Skillshop on the 3rd or 4th Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. These webinars are free and open to all tourism stakeholders. They are also recorded and are shared with registrants and other users on the SWT YouTube channel. For Tourism Skillshop and other industry updates, visit the SWT industry website, sign up for the industry update newsletter, and follow SWT on LinkedIn. Tourism stakeholders may also join the SWT Facebook group for further discussion on topics related to the Tourism Skillshop and other industry news, issues, and events. Now let's dive into today's webinar. This webinar in the Tourism Skillshop will showcase ways to create value-added experiences for heritage travelers. Cultural heritage tourism contributes billions of dollars to the global economy and is popular with both international and domestic travelers. It allows visitors to experience the history, food, art, and other unique characteristics of a people and place. And heritage travelers tend to stay longer and spend more than other travelers. So much then depends on the quality of products and services associated with cultural heritage tourism. In this Tourism Skillshop webinar, attendees will learn how to create value-added experiences for heritage travelers. These carefully curated and authentic experiences should foster a greater appreciation and understanding of cultural heritage among visitors, usually in line with community shared values and other tourism assets. An expert panel of tourism practitioners will share their knowledge and experiences in this arena and offer case studies, partnership opportunities, and other resources. The guest speakers for this webinar are Judy Walden of the Walden Mills Group, a community-based tourism consulting firm, and Marcy Montgomery, Program Director of the San Juan Islands Makers Guild. Marcy also promotes and manages the Salish Sea Folk Arts Festival at Moran State Park on Orcas Island in the San Juan Islands. This festival offers lodging options, hands-on workshops, music, food, dancing, and a Makers Village on May 17th and 18th. So let me just introduce Judy and Marcy a bit more so you know a little bit about their backgrounds, their knowledge and experience when it comes to cultural heritage tourism. Judy is a longtime tourism consultant and educator. She is also the president of the Walden Mills Group that I mentioned earlier. She has served as a special advisor on many tourism projects and has a depth of community success stories rooted in her broad on-the-ground experience. Judy has designed specialized cultural experiences for international travelers, facilitated Share Your Heritage workshops in Alaska for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and help tourism stakeholders in the state of Washington capitalize on the rich culinary offerings. I believe that was around the Olympic Peninsula, Judy.
Right.
She is an online instructor for a professional certificate program in cultural heritage tourism with an emphasis on indigenous tourism backed by the George Washington University. That's how I know Judy. Marcy has been working to strengthen rural communities in three Western states over the last 20 years. In 2018, her nonprofit work evolved to include the San Juan Islands Makers Guild, which helps develop a sustainable year-round cultural resource economy for those remote rural islands in Washington State. With financial backing from USDA, HUD, the National Endowment for the Arts, and now the San Juan County LTAC Committee, Marcy has continued with her work that explores, celebrates, and supports rural culture, lifestyles, and sustainable living skills. For example, these include the collaboration with partner organizations that serve artists, farmers, and visitors in the San Juan Islands, managing a farm to fork program, arts events, hands-on retreats, and seasonal festival programs on 3 islands in the San Juan Islands. And she hosts Made in the San Juans, an online marketplace connecting buyers to makers from the San Juans. So now that I got that out of the way, Judy and Marcy, thank you for joining us today. We have a lot to talk about. I think we'll use the entire hour. I love cultural heritage tourism. I studied race and culture and politics in college, and then really got involved in tourism in New Zealand and cultural heritage tourism in the Walla Walla Valley. So this stuff means a lot to me, and I hope it means a lot to the folks on the webinar today. So with that, Marcy, you can go ahead and mute yourself and turn off your camera. Judy, I'll bring you in just a little bit, but I want to share a few slides just to kind of set the scene for folks on the webinar today. I only have a few slides, folks. It won't take very long, but I want to make sure I can share my screen with you first. Let's see. Share my screen. I think you can see my screen, and I want to view slideshow. Well, I mentioned the slides, or I mentioned the keynote speakers earlier. Just a few points that I want everyone to kind of consider as we're going forward. Cultural heritage tourism. Judy has a definition for us in her slides, but it's really going to focus on authenticity and quality. I think those things people have to keep in mind in the design and research of their value-added experiences. Community shared values, what you share in these experiences matters, and it really should be in line with those values and cultures in your local community to really bring out that authenticity. And just to know heritage travelers, what they're looking for in this day and age. I think it's the fastest growing segment in tourism worldwide. I think 40% of folks, according to Brand USA, are looking for authentic cultural experiences throughout the US, but also the world. So look for those folks, especially folks that are traveling along scenic byways, which is something that I work with here in Washington State. In terms of value added, Judy will go into greater detail about this and what it means. But again, research, design, and evaluate these experiences to make sure that they're tourism ready, market ready, customer ready. That's going to be really, really important. So you can monetize them and appropriately. And Judy will also touch on this too. Creating these experiences start with a product. And then there's the experience, but it's really about creating lasting memories, surprising your customers, making sure that that they're transformed in a sense. Happy customers, folks that have gone through a great experience, could also help market your business or experience with online reviews, testimonials, things like that. And don't be afraid to set the right price. Don't make sure you kind of do your market research and price everything from the good, the service, the experience, the entire package. I think folks are willing to pay a premium in this day and age. And then partnerships too. Look at the local tourism office for help here. But when we're talking about value-added experiences and partnerships, for instance, if you're a tour guide and you're doing a nature walk, is there a way to kind of add value to that experience by adding a lunch component, a meal component, whether it's breakfast or lunch? And you're working with a local caterer with local foods, farm to fork or indigenous foods. That's the kind of partnership, business partnership, that we would be looking for in that example. And there are also other resources out there, not only from State of Washington Tourism, but from ArtSWA, the Center of Washington for Washington Cultural Traditions, the Washington Trust for Historic Preservations. There's grant information on those websites. Brand USA also has a multicultural strategy that it's working on across the United States, where it's looking for photos, itineraries, articles, anything to help broaden the tourism offerings here in America that go a little deeper into multicultural communities. And in the State of Washington Tourism, we also have arts and culture grants that I believe that program just wrapped up, but the technical assistance grant is available for nonprofit organizations now. And I believe that will go until May 15th. And I have a slide that I'll talk about that. But also focus on local chambers. I mentioned destination organizations earlier, economic development districts, your local LTAC committees, if there's grant opportunities to help you develop these products and experiences, keep all of that in mind. Now I'll jump to the technical assistance grant. Like I said, this grant offers, we have $75,000 allocated for this grant, but we can entertain requests up to $15,000. Today, if you feel like you need some professional expertise in cultural heritage tourism, this grant, you can apply for to help you with that. You can do a lot of this work in-house, but you could also kind of look for someone like a Judy Walden to help you with the consulting services to better develop these experiences and then market them as well. I kind of ran over my time, folks, and my PowerPoint wasn't working as well as I thought it would, but I'm going to stop there to give as much time to Judy and Marcy as possible. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And then Judy, I'm going to pull up your PowerPoint presentation, and I can definitely find the start button here. Let's see, I need to share my screen again and pull up your PowerPoint. Okay. Judy, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, from the beginning, here we go. Judy, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Lovely to be with you. When Matt called and asked if I was interested in working on value added in Heritage Traveler, I was delighted because no one's ever asked the question in quite that way before. So I thought about, in terms of what we talk about today, what needs to be focused on. And he's very clear, he's from the Department of Tourism, right? This needs to be about improving the economics in tourism throughout the state, not only for entrepreneurs themselves, but for communities. So I've chosen examples that I think reflect that. The other thing I think in terms of value added is that we always have to be in tourism aware of a sense of place. Is in terms of the tangibles and the intangibles we're talking about with products, do they add experiences that say to people, this is going to be memorable, this is worth the drive? And when travelers arrive, do they fit into the authentic culture that exists there? So there's the framework for what we're talking about. So what contributes to the sense of place includes not only activities, but everyday people and what I call the civic life of a community. What happens every day? And one of the things I find is some of the most satisfying things that people report when they get back from a trip and say, you know what I loved? They love being part of something, and they love feeling like they're a part of place. And I think those are two good guidelines when you decide to go ahead and try to develop a new experience. Is that going to give people a sense that they could belong, even for an hour, belong for a day, right? That's essential to this kind of product development. So what is cultural heritage tourism anyway? We're all operating under this National Trust for Historic Preservation definition that I think works pretty well. Traveling to experience the places and activities that authentically represent the stories and people of the past and present. So I want to take two things from that definition. The first is that cultural heritage travelers, even though the word is heritage and suggests the past, are just as interested in contemporary culture as they are in history and heritage. Okay, if not more so. So the past has, informed what life is like in that place today. That makes it part of the sense of place. But travelers want to know what's going on now. What are people here talking and thinking and working on? All right, so balance the contemporary with the historic. The other word that hopefully will overshadows everything that has to do with cultural heritage tourism is authenticity. And when we come to an end of this short presentation I'm doing today, I want you to think about what you're working on. Is it authentic, right? And what does authenticity, what do you worry about is, should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? Will this resonate with people that are looking for authenticity? Okay, so with that, I would say that authenticity is also paired with the word meaningfulness. When travel first started, people think, well, it's the great tour. You have to go a lot of places and see and do a lot of things. That actually has shifted. Now people are saying, I want to do something that's meaningful. Not only just meaningful to me, but is meaningful to the community. And that not only doesn't take away from the community, but is meaningful to the community, enhances who the community wants to be as a collective. Okay, so think about as we go forward here with authenticity. The first story I'm going to tell took place in Alaska. It was the Department of Tourism. It was almost 10 years ago now. And they're in such a lucky circumstance when it comes to getting visitor evaluation of what happened. Because, to get home from Alaska, you either have to fly or float out. And it's pretty easy to find people in the airport or on a boat and say, how was your time here? So they asked two questions. Not how was your time, but they said, what did you do in Alaska while you were here on this trip? Right? And when you broke out the people that answered in the two groups, the men pretty much said, fish, right? And the women said, oh, well, we fished and hiked, chopped, right? Ate food, did whatever we had a chance to do. Oh, then there was only one second question. And the question is, if you're coming back in 5 years, what would you like to do then? The men said, fish with a native guide. The women said, buy authentic Native American art. There it is. I think that's a great introduction to what's authentic, right? And it goes from fish to artwork. So I offer that. Second thing I'd like to talk about is to talk about walking the Camino. This is a pilgrimage that has been in place for hundreds and hundreds of years, where Catholics from around Europe go to the cathedral in Santiago, Spain. It really came into my consciousness probably maybe 10 years ago, when the first group that went, the first people I knew are these two young people that are featured here, Terry and Darba. I've known them since they were youngsters. And when they're pictured here, they're both, she has just graduated from the university, and he's still in school in architecture. She was finished, went to Brown University, thought when she got out, she'd know what she should do. She had no idea. She said, it seemed like everyone was going to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? Or something else specific, and I had no idea. And she knew about the Camino, the walk. So she announced to her family that she was going to walk the Camino, 600 miles. She was going to put, a month aside. She thought she could make 20 miles a day. And she had read that it was safe for women alone. Whoa. Her brother Darby said, all of a sudden I've sort of gotten an interest in this, thinking she's not going on this alone. How about if I join you? So he joined her. So her thinking about what shall I do when I grow up? What shall I do next? Him thinking about, let me go see the architecture in Europe. I know what I want to do. And off they went. The next group is my neighbors. Okay. Oops, I just clicked out of my Zoom. Let me get off here. All right. The next group are the neighbors. This is Christoph and Kelly. Kelly, now in her 40s, very successful IT career, said, I need a new job and I can't get free enough of my present job. So I'm walking the Camino. I went, God, here's another one. And her husband, Christoph, said, who are you going with? And she said, I'm going alone. I read that it was safe. Right? Christoph said, all of a sudden, I think I can get free for a month. And he went with her. Right? Same time, there's another picture, not pictured, but a family friend who was in the Vietnam War. And he said, I'm going to deal with my military dragons from that many years ago. So off they went. Interestingly, what do you do when you're a pilgrim, right? You go by yourself, or you walk by yourself or with whoever you came with, right? And you walk up to 20 miles a day. You arrive at a hostel where you sleep with between 8 and 80 people a night, right? The hostel furnishes a meal, always with a glass of wine, a shower, and everybody goes to bed early. You get up the next day, you do it again. And as long as you walk until you arrive at this cathedral, you are a pilgrim. And everybody on the road honors that you are on a pilgrimage. You're either going from, if you're European, you're going from home in one big pilgrimage, or for many Europeans, you're taking pieces of it, right? You go one after the other after the other. The thing that strikes everybody is that it's authentic. Most touching thing I've heard from both people is that people take care of you along the way. You're a pilgrim. And doctors especially take care of feet, always for free. So you're a pilgrim, right? You may be a foreigner. They don't know what you're walking with, your demons, your hopes, your dreams, but you're on a pilgrimage.
And Judy, you go from that to witches. So we
I
go
know,
from
how'd we get to the witches? So
yeah, so
there's
tell
one
us about
thing
that.
now, right? So here's the next, and that is a long tradition. So I don't want you to think you have to do something that's here's that old, right? The walking. This, I think, is a modern day example of what to do with historic sites. Castle of Lancashire is infamous because in 1200 they had the trials where multiple, mainly women, some men, were hanged because they were found to be guilty of being a witch. And people came from the communities all around the castle. And for the people who were accused, they had to walk themselves from their home to the castle, go on trial without a defense. And here's what you can do today. Today, led by a poem written by the poet laureate of Britain, you go to the villages that were home to these women. And in each place you find a marker and a stanza of the poem honoring the bravery of that woman. And in this case, the story of this tour that was available to heritage travelers came in my adventure cycling bicycle magazine, right? And written by a young woman who had a bike. And this was not a month, this was a weekend. She came with her bike. Visitors Bureau gave her a map. She went to each of the communities, right? Ate in pubs, stayed in bed and breakfast, and rode her own bike. And when she left, she had touched in with an authentic story, a hard story, but an authentic story. And it had been expressed in a very artistic way through poetry. So poetry, art, music, right? And one town has a bronze statue of their person. There's one heritage small museum in one of the towns, but each town expresses their pride, their empathy for their person. And visitors are invited to come and walk it, bike it, drive it on their own terms. Okay.
I see your next slide, Judy. Newfoundland.
Right.
Did you want to mention this briefly?
Yeah, I'll mention it briefly so we get moving here. So I just learned about this one from Matt, as a matter of fact, but it's quite wonderful. It's a lighthouse in Newfoundland, right? And the woman who now offers lunches in a picnic basket and a blanket to sit on had a grandmother who lived in the lighthouse, right? And it's started years ago, and year after year, people now from all around are coming to sit, look at the sea, have the lunch that was made there, and this is their heritage experience, right? Simple. The same concept with another investor bought 4 lighthouses, right? And he has overnight stays. So if you'd like to have lunch, there's this, right? If you'd like an overnight stay and to make it more complex, right, there's the overnight stay.
Well said. I like that example.
Okay, now, food is enormously expensive. Expensive. In some cases, it is enormously important to cultural and heritage travelers. We've been through they've got local food, right? Or, oh, there's a local brewery, to what is the local food? What is made here locally for food and drink, right? And we've now arrived at the place where when people are planning holidays, one of the things they say is, what's the cuisine, right? What's the food like? So one of the great trends in terms of cultural heritage travelers is they're looking for, health and wellness, as well as some intellectual stimulation and the use of the 5 senses. And we eat 3 times a day, so food is enormous. This man, in Time magazine last year, it would be just a year ago, was named one of the most, by Time magazine, one of the most important people in terms of new thinking in the world. right? His name is Sean Sherman. He calls himself the sous chef, and he has opened a fine dining restaurant in Owamni, named Owamni, that was named the best new restaurant in America by James Beard 2 years ago. Since has also been acknowledged by Julia Child as making an enormous contribution to the understanding of food and cuisine in America. What's the cuisine, right? The cuisine is pre-colonial food, pre-colonial indigenous cuisine, lacking everything that, right, we've done to all our food. No sugar, no flour. Focus on what was here: buffalo, vegetables, berries. And I can attest it's wonderful food. I can also attest that is changing the way people all over America think about what is indigenous food, right? The fact that he entered with fine, right? Not what wasn't there, but he entered as a fine food establishment. And in the Twin Cities where I live, 2 years later, it's still a 2-month wait to get a reservation for dinner.
Wow.
Right. So food is important and food matters hugely. Okay. So these are ways that people are approaching different things: story, food, right? A way to be outside and be active and still learn something. Okay. And all of that had to do with authenticity. Now we're going to look at terms of how money is made in tourism. One of the things that, when you look at the picnic at the lighthouse, you have to say, who are her partners? Right? It is so hard to make money in tourism with just one product, right? So the product is what you buy, right? And the product can be an experience, but the experience is what you remember. So let's go through a framework that I developed, because when I was a tour operator, I was bringing international travelers from Asia into the Rocky Mountain region. It sure looked like I was doing everything right. I was traveled with the state of Colorado, so it was a public-private partnership. I had businesses that I partnered with in Japan. I was in partnership with United Airlines that flew a group of us over and back 4 times a year on sales trip. It sure looked like it was working. But after about 3 years, our initial investment in the project started looking like, wow, we don't look so good on paper. And I came to the conclusion that I understood all the things I was supposed to do, the partners I was supposed to make, but I didn't know just the basics of how money is made in tourism. So I came up with this formula, which saved our business. And I've now been, sharing this with other people, and it makes so much sense because you don't write it down on paper, put it on your fingers. So here it is. This is how profit is made every place. Every place we've seen in terms of the examples I brought today, all make profit the same way. Okay. And this is it. It's based on the needs of travelers. So take a look at the framework I'm about to show you, and then guess what you think each of these are. I'm going to show you the 7 slices of the day. 3, sleep. 3, sleep. 3, sleep. There's a weekend. Okay. Basically, we travel on our bellies. So the first 3 is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Second, pathetic creatures that we are, we need something to do between breakfast and lunch and dinner and bed. So we'll call those activities, and then you sleep. And it doesn't matter where you are, right? Or how much money you spend on each of these. We as travelers expect that we're going to have these 7 divisions of the day, which I call 7 slices of the day. Okay. So
7 slices, 3 sleep framework. I like it, Judy.
I like it.
Judy, I'm giving you a time check. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
5 minutes, I'll make it. Okay, so when you use 3-3 sleep, when people travel, and a lot of you are in small towns, when people travel, if they get out of bed in the morning, have a nice breakfast at the hotel, right? And set out in the morning and say, what do we do this morning? And there's not much available in the next town, there's lunch, they're out of there just like that. You have to look at every day that every every traveler travels, and they feel a need for these 7 things. And if you're only offering 1 or 2, right, you have to find partners for the rest or other down the road. So they use that in terms of the way they envision the destination for choosing a destination, and they envision, and then they use it as they travel through the day. Okay, next slide.
Looks like you have a wine example. You're pairing wine with an event.
Right.
There could have been lunch. What else can you
Take it
tell us
away.
quickly here? Well, I
Right.
think it looks like a good example. I think, is it from Walla Walla? Is that right? Yeah, Walla Walla
It's from
Chamber
Walla
Music,
Walla.
a partnership between a winery and a nonprofit organization. There's something in it for the winery. The winery gets to host the event on site. There's wine sales. There's a tasting experience, but then also there's this music experience and the combination thereof. So good example here in Washington.
The other example is this.
Okay.
Walla Walla, I have so much admiration for this destination. So they have over 100 tours where you can take wine tasting tours. Other locations will say, what else do you need? Right? And what Walla Walla is saying is, we need ways for people to go deeper into our community and to have a deeper, more well-rounded, right, event, as opposed to, they're proud of it. They do a fantastic job, right? But they're looking for, we are this and we're more than wine tasting. Authentically, who are we? What other parts do we want to show in terms of our lifestyle? What's available here? So this is a community that's really going after that next level. You've got, what's the next step? That's the best question you could ask about product development. What should we do next? They've
And
asked
how to monetize it.
right.
Okay, Judy, we're going to wrap up with you. I think I'm
Slide by the
skipping.
next 2 and give me the trends in tourism. Can I finish with that?
Yes, and we talked about the product that you buy, developing it, turning it into a service, and then eventually a memory. Yes, experience is what you remember. I think that's the takeaway. I'm glad
And if
you
you're
touched on
not
that a
doing,
bit.
if you're not doing something memorable, please don't start.
Okay, so you're on this slide now. Is this your last slide?
No, where's the one that the slide before, which is trends and heritage?
Trends and heritage, right
That's
here.
it. I'd like to end here.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
These are trends, of course, that exist in mass market tourism as well. But these are the trends that are really driving heritage tourism. First is health and wellness, right? And the pandemic showed exactly what they found out at Brand USA. And that's, people want to go to lesser known spots and they want authenticity. I went, hallelujah. That is what people want. And we found out in the pandemic, and of course we knew before that too, is people always fill out, what would you like to do when you travel in America? Check, go to a small, charming town. But there aren't that many small, charming towns that have 3-3 sleep put together in a way that people can stay and walk the streets, right? And enjoy the food and figure out what people are about there. So, health and wellness. Quest for meaningful travel. We've talked about authenticity. You really need to think of what that means in your destination. Okay, the sustainability and travel to lesser known destinations. People have been pushing it for years. On the travel end, we need to get better organized for small towns. It's not easy. It's just capacity. Are there enough people to get this together and deliver it? Finally, foods are incredibly important, and heritage traveler want to be active in the outdoors for all ages. The traditional experience has been take a historic walking tour or visit a museum. And the museums are under incredible pressure because people say, well, these artifacts are nice. It took them decades to get it together so you could come and look at the story. But where did it happen? That's where I want to go. I want the authentic place. And with that, I end.
The authentic place and the authentic experience, or take it to the next level outside the place where it happened and then turn it into a memory. So thank you, Judy. Marcy, we'll get you up and running. I will stop sharing my screen. And Marcy, I think the first question, that I have for you is tell us a little bit more about your festival, but I think we can do that by showing your video. Should we do that first?
Yeah, please launch with that. That's great.
All right, excellent. So I have that teed up. Let's see here, share my screen. And that's why I had all these tabs open and I wanted to make sure I had your video.
There is sound with it.
All right, Marcy.
Yeah, I wasn't able to hear the sound. Were you able to hear sound?
Yes, I was. It was a little loud for me. That's why I turned it down just a little bit, but I think I can pop that in the chat, and I can let everyone take a look at it. But Marcy, tell us a little bit about your the reason why you decided to host this festival. And I think it takes in components that Judy mentioned, the hands-on experiences. You have a number of things for people to do and options to eat and stay the night. So just kind of, and the partnerships too, it looks like there's a lot of people involved, including the state parks. Why don't you just tell us about how this was all designed and what you hope to accomplish with it?
So when we first started the Makers Guild 4 or 5 years ago, and we did our listening circles in the community with different makers, we asked them to prioritize what was the most important services that our nonprofit could provide. And one of the ones was important to everyone, especially this was kind of pandemic time period, was strengthening community, education, both educating themselves and educating others, as well as the economic development piece. And that was a little different than we had thought when we conceived of the organization. We thought it would be more strictly about the economic development. So we kind of listened to what the community wanted, and we've developed a variety of different types of programs to address these. And then we formed advisory councils and then asked the councils, okay, we were getting this money from the county, from LTAC. How would you like us to invest it? Everyone said education. So it is an interesting sort of contrast. The makers, the creative people tend to be very much alone in their studios working. Not all of them want to come out and teach, but those that do are very eager to share their skills and to create this heritage connection between skills from the past, how they're being implemented in the future, and then moving into working with younger kids in the future generations as well. So after doing some sort of marketplace activities where there was a lot of things for sale, we really felt that we needed the soul of our community and our makers. And the best way we could see to do this is to create a series of retreats and festivals. So this new festival is bringing together over 40 different makers that would be musicians and dancers and blacksmiths and weavers, wood carvers, boat builders. It's quite an interesting group of people. And our goal and how it was structured in working with the state parks is to use one of their retreat centers. So we have the opportunity for people to come spend a night or two and really be immersed in taking the 3-hour workshops, or they have the option to just come for the day pass on a Saturday and be part of the festival itself.
Excellent.
And the festival itself is where all the music unfolds, as well as a lot of demonstrations, a little bit of hands-on, and then the local food component is strong in part of the festival.
Excellent.
And, when I'm talking to the makers, I'm also letting them know that, well, this is a big event in the sense of lots of different things going on, but our goal is really to try and find customers who want to come back to them and spend 2 or 3 days and really have a deeper, more immersive experience. So I guess in a way, it's sort of like a cultural buffet that people are coming to experience. But on the audience side, I did interviews with people who were coming because I'm part of the farm tour program that happens each fall, really trying to listen to people that would make the trip from Portland or would make the trip from Seattle to come out here. What were they looking for? And this recurring thing about an authentic experience really resonates. And there is a group of travelers that I think maybe aren't easily identified, that are more the maybe 33, 35 year to early 40s who are having kids, who used to travel a lot, right? Now they're looking for ways to travel as a family and ways to have meaningful experiences. And there is an interest in the history piece in that group, because they see that these skills and knowledge and wisdom could disappear and not be available to their children. So they're very interested in coming out and exposing their kids to local agriculture and local history and local culture. So I feel that the festival opportunity is a way to really immerse people in this, but our goal is to then invite them back for a longer stay, another time. And like with this, there's the option to camp or have a cabin or have a room in a resort nearby. So we're really trying to work with the partnerships, and this new partnership with Washington State Parks has been very important. It has helped me also hone in on the folk and traditional arts as a way to sort of have a concept umbrella that all of these other activities fall under. And now with Matt's help, as well as state parks, I'm learning there's actually a little bit of funding that may help us in the future.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What resources did you utilize and leverage? Just quickly, and I think Judy has a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Well, I think your strategy is really interesting when you start thinking just even about the festival, that it's a stepping stone to something that creates more of those 7 slices of the day for long week, even if it's long weekends throughout the year. So I think that's a wonderful strategy.
Yeah, and we are hosting it in May, so it's still part of the shoulder season.
Right.
And our goal is then to find ways to reach people from the kind of surrounding more urban areas, some rural too, to come out really like more in the winter when things are very quiet here. And, it's a little less costly to stay. The restaurants are eager to have customers, and there's a chance to really, spend 5 days with an artist really learning a skill.
And then market it that way. Say, come for a couple of days and see if you'd like to land here for a week and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I know the way that you're positioning it is really smart.
I appreciate hearing that, because it's been fairly intuitive so far.
Well, and you'll have a lot to learn, Marcy. This is your first festival of this kind. So again, you've done some research, like you said earlier. You'll implement it, you'll evaluate, I'm sure, and then you'll also improve. I told you that there are grants to help with festivals and events that are less than 3 years old through State of Washington Tourism. So that resource is available to you. What other resources did you utilize or leverage in your local area?
Well, the initial funding that we got was rural development funding from the USDA, and we did an asset mapping project. And that was our opportunity, because while we are one county, each island has a distinctly different personality, and they don't communicate a lot with each other. So we had to be very proactive and go out to all the different islands that have very active communities and just learn who's making what and doing what. are they selling just locally? Do they want to sell into the Seattle market? Are they interested in receiving guests who will come? And then at the same time, keeping an eye out for who are the accommodations partners, where are the restaurants, what other kinds of integrated experiences where maybe they go to a farm and they have a farm tour and they have a farm meal, but then also they make something on that farm that may use a plant, a dye, the wool from the sheep or something. So we're really trying to sort of integrate both the food and the cultural artisan art community into an experience so that people go away realizing that this isn't history. This is living culture today that we are intentionally keeping alive out here. And hopefully that inspires other communities to do the same thing.
Well said. Well, folks, we're approaching the end of our webinar. This is an opportunity to ask your questions. Go ahead and put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A function. Marcy, you're spot on. You kind of answered a lot of my questions already. How does this event support makers and other tourism stakers in the San Juan Islands throughout the rest of the year and contribute to a maker economy and support the community? I think you kind of touched on that. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that point?
Well, I think that the challenge we face is probably faced by other people that are here today, which is when you're in a rural area, how do you structure an activity so that it is, like she said, worth the time to drive to get there, right?
Yeah.
And we are going to start working more with our visitor bureau to really diving into the data to try and figure out, how long do people usually come for and what can we fit inside what they currently are accustomed to doing. But also we're trying to help people think about, not a 2 or 3 day trip, but how do we turn this into a 5 or 6 day experience? Because there's so much to sample out here and we'd really, like to grow this over time so that it does create that year-round economy.
Well said. My last question, and you've already given so much advice and expertise. What other advice? Is there anything else that there's left for other makers, festival organizers, and other tourism stakeholders around the state that are interested in putting together a festival like this, or just creating value-added experiences for heritage travelers? What else would you tell them?
Well, I would suggest developing this from a grassroots point of view, where you go out and you meet the practitioners and really hear and listen to them. Because it's very easy for me to sit in my office and dream up some wonderful program and then try and fit people into that puzzle. But I find that it's much more effective if I'm listening and responding. So having an advisory council of people that really help you understand what the human assets are that are in your community, as well as the environmental and the agricultural assets, and then build from the ground up. And I think that then gives that resonant authenticity because it's really coming from the local community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said. Judy, we have a few minutes left. Do you have any questions for Marcy?
One of the things that I know is my favorite part about the time that I've had in Washington State is, that ferry time for those of us who are inlanders, like getting on the ferry and going from place to place is such, that's an incredible part of the experience itself. And that in so many places, in other rural areas, they're trying to overcome that by making it into a bicycle trip, right? Or making multimodal is huge. You've got a part of a river, if you could bicycle part of it, right? Paddle part of it, right? So that's what other rural communities are doing, are putting different types of travel together, but you've just got a jewel. And the other thing I know from being in Washington, people, when I'd come back from Washington State, I always say, oh God, it's a food paradise, right? And they'd say, well, yeah, but we really want to go to the islands, but which one? So one of the things that you could do is to sort of do a tasting tour of the islands and let people look at the cultures. And you've said they're different. They're not the same, right? How are they different, right? A tasting tour of the different cultures of the islands would be fantastic.
That's
There's
great.
something like that. There's there's more of kind of like a heritage or harvest festival I think Savor the San Juans. Amy, Deborah, if you're on, you can tell us a little bit more about that. But yes, you're right. These things are there. They perhaps need to kind of just be fleshed out a little bit more with collaboration and
Right.
communication.
And I would just add that in terms of, you think, where's the money? What are people willing to pay for?
Mhm.
Okay. So, it used to be that people were willing to be just entertained, right? Now they pay for access to something they care about. Very interesting. When I first started my business, I was living in Denver, and three of us got this idea that nobody was bringing international visitors for ski, golf, and tennis. We had plenty of capacity and not enough people. So that's how we started the business, with that idea, right? Is why don't we go over and invite people from Japan to come? We share these interests in these sports. It didn't take me 6 months until, no matter what I was offering, what they really wanted was access to different parts of the American culture. So I ended up bringing people who were not wanted to play golf, but people who were making quilts. They wanted to join with other quilters group. People who were the railroads, they wanted to be a sister railroad city, right?
Interesting.
Orchestras wanted to make change. So I really made a business on selling access to people that said, if I could just figure out that part of America, I'd love it. So that's how powerful.
Uh-oh, did we lose Judy?
Hmm.
We just had a few technical difficulties today, folks. No sound. I'm going to get my PowerPoint to in Zoom, my PowerPoint in Zoom. And now we've just lost Judy. And we are at the end of the webinar. It is 11 o'clock. You will get a recording. You will get Judy's slides. You will get my slides. And hopefully we can get Judy back on, because I also wanted to leave this with all of you. Judy Walden has graciously donated 3 hours of consulting time to State of Washington Tourism and the attendees on this webinar today. So if you have a cultural heritage tourism project, product, experience that you need a little bit more help on, contact me. Let me know what it is. Let me know the partners involved. And then I can try to schedule a date and time with you and Judy, whether that's a 30-minute meeting or an hour. I can give you that connection and that consulting time for free. Like I said, we have our technical assistance grants that run up until May 15th that you can use up to $15,000, no match required, from State of Washington Tourism to utilize professional expertise, usually from a consultant of some kind, to work on an aspect of tourism that has to be travel and tourism related. So whether that has to do with cultural heritage tourism or strategic marketing or just strategic planning in general, those grants can help you there. So folks, we are out of time. Thank you for sticking with us today. I apologize for the technical glitches. I'll try to get Judy back on. And stay tuned next month for the May Skill Shop. We'll focus on